Some stories arrive in envelopes, carrying not just words but entire lives folded into their lines. This letter, written by a woman now 79 years old from Pennsylvania, tells us about the power of American Bandstand. She grew up in the era when the show was more than a television program. It was an event that shaped afternoons, inspired dreams, and stitched itself into the fabric of youth across the country. In her case, the program became something larger, the beginning of a journey with dance that would carry her through childhood, family life, and even the challenges of aging. Reading her words, we see not only the glow of a black and white screen, but also the glow of a spirit that refused to stop moving. The following pages are her own voice, her own memories, her own way of saying thank you to the show that gave her rhythm, resilience, and joy. Dear friends, I still remember the very first afternoon when something inside me shifted. I was just a girl in Pennsylvania, sitting in our modest living room with the curtains half drawn, when the black and white television flickered to life. The familiar sound of American Bandstand filled the room, and I leaned forward as if the glow itself were calling me closer. That day felt different. Perhaps it was the song, playful, fast, alive, as though it carried my own heartbeat in its rhythm. Or perhaps it was the dancers who seemed to glide effortlessly across the studio floor. Their skirts swayed, their shoes tapped, and their laughter felt brighter than the screen could contain. For the first time, I didn't just admire them. I imagined myself among them. I could almost feel the smooth floor under my feet, almost hear the applause ringing in my ears. I was so absorbed that I barely noticed my mother calling me for supper. The world outside disappeared. All that remained was the music, the movement, and the sudden thought, if they can do it, why can't I? It was not jealousy, but possibility, as if a door had opened wide before me. That night, I moved the furniture in my bedroom, pushed my little bed against the wall, and created my own dance floor. I whispered counts under my breath, 1, 2, 3, 4, while trying to imitate the turns I had seen. My feet stumbled, my balance wavered, but instead of shame, I felt excitement. I laughed at my clumsiness and tried again, and again. With every small misstep, I felt myself grow a little braver. The mirror on my dresser showed a shy girl who had always been too quiet in school, often overlooked. Yet as I practiced those first awkward spins, I began to see something new, a girl who could move with purpose, who could find her own rhythm. The steps were not perfect, but they were mine. That evening marked the beginning of everything. It wasn't just about dancing. It was about claiming a piece of myself I hadn't known existed. In those moments, I discovered that joy didn't come from applause or recognition. It came from daring to try, from letting music carry me forward even when my feet faltered. From that night on, American Bandstand was no longer just a show I watched. It became my teacher, my companion, the spark that would guide me through so many chapters of life yet to come. After that first night in my bedroom, dancing quickly became the heartbeat of my days. I hurried through homework, helped my mother with chores, and then disappeared into my little practice space. At first, my steps were clumsy, my turns uneven, and my timing always a beat too slow. But the more I practiced, the more determined I became. I wasn't simply copying movements anymore. I was learning how to listen to music with my whole body. Eventually, I persuaded my parents to let me join a beginner's dance class at the community center. I was terrified on that first day. The floor was polished to a shine, the room echoed with music, and everyone seemed so confident. My palms were sweaty as I tried to follow the teacher's instructions. When I stumbled into my partner and nearly knocked him over, my cheeks burned with embarrassment. I wanted to run out the door. But the teacher, a kind woman with patient eyes, smiled and told me, "Every mistake is proof that you're learning." Those words stayed with me. They gave me courage to keep trying, even when my feet didn't cooperate. Slowly, the rhythm began to seep into me. My body started to trust itself. I learned to relax my shoulders, to step with intention, to let the music guide me instead of fighting against it. More than the steps, dancing began teaching me lessons that reached beyond the studio. I learned discipline, the quiet kind that comes from showing up again and again, even when progress feels invisible. I learned respect, because dancing with a partner meant listening to someone else, moving in harmony, and sharing space with care. I learned that patience with myself was just as important as patience with others. My first performance came sooner than I expected. Our class was asked to dance at the school auditorium for a local event. As I stood behind the curtain, my knees trembling, I wondered if I could really do it. But when the music began and I took my first step, the fear melted away. I felt the rhythm steady me, and I remembered all the nights of practice in my little room. My parents were sitting in the front row, and when I caught a glimpse of their proud faces, I felt something I had never known before. Confidence. That performance wasn't flawless, but it was transformative. It showed me that the shy girl who once doubted herself could step into the light and hold her head high. And it all traced back to American Bandstand, the show that planted the seed and gave me a reason to keep moving forward. One of the things I loved most about American Bandstand was that it didn't just belong to me, it belonged to my whole family. When the program came on in the afternoon, everything else seemed to pause. My father would settle into his favorite chair, tapping his foot to the beat as though he were keeping time for the dancers on the screen. My mother, always attentive to details, would comment on the outfits. "Look at that skirt twirl," or "I like the way that boy wears his jacket." Even my younger brother, who usually preferred to play outside, would sneak into the room, his eyes glued to the television as he tried to mimic the claps and spins. Those afternoons gave us something rare: unity. Whatever disagreements had filled the day, whatever small troubles weighed on us, they seemed to dissolve the moment the music began. For an hour, we weren't arguing over chores or worrying about bills. We were simply a family sharing the same rhythm. I didn't realize it at the time, but those hours together were weaving threads of memory that would last much longer than the songs themselves. Sometimes my grandparents would visit, and they would smile knowingly at the new dances, saying they reminded them of their own youth. My grandmother often told stories of crowded ballrooms in the 1930s, of swing bands playing late into the night, and how she and my grandfather danced until their shoes wore thin. Hearing her talk, I realized that music had always been a bridge between generations. What I felt while watching Bandstand wasn't new. It was part of a timeless story that stretched back through my family. One evening, something unforgettable happened. My father, who rarely danced, stood up, extended his hand, and asked me to join him. At first I laughed, thinking he was teasing, but then he twirled me gently across the living room floor. He wasn't graceful, but he didn't care, and neither did I. My mother clapped along, her eyes sparkling as though she had been transported back to her own teenage years. That moment is etched in my memory like a photograph, full of laughter and love. We even kept little mementos from those days. I still have a yellowed newspaper clipping about the growing popularity of American Bandstand. Tucked inside an old diary is a faded ticket stub from a local dance contest. These small scraps of paper became treasures, not because of their monetary value, but because they carried the weight of shared joy. Looking back, I realized that Bandstand gave us more than entertainment. It gave us a language to speak across generations, a way to be together without words. The music didn't just fill our house, it filled our hearts, binding us in a rhythm that still echoes in my memory today. As the years rolled on, and I became a mother myself, I carried the rhythms of American Bandstand deep within me. The television program was no longer on the air in the way I had known it, but the music and the memory lived on. I found myself humming the old tunes while cooking dinner, or tapping my foot absent-mindedly as I folded laundry. One evening, as a record spun softly in the background, my daughter, no more than 6 years old, tilted her head and asked, "Mom, can you show me how to do that?" Her question stopped me in my tracks. It was as if the past had suddenly stepped into the present. I knelt down, took her tiny hands in mine, and began guiding her through the simplest steps I knew. She stumbled, of course, tripping over her own feet, but her laughter rang through the room like music itself. Each time she wobbled, she looked up at me with shining eyes, waiting for reassurance, and I told her exactly what I had once needed to hear. Every mistake is just another way to learn. Soon, my son joined us, clapping along before daring to join the steps. The three of us turned the living room into a miniature dance floor, our laughter mixing with the sound of the old record. For them, it was a game. For me, it was a bridge, a way to pass on not just dance moves, but the confidence and joy that Bandstand had given me decades earlier. As my children grew older, I continued to share that rhythm with them. I reminded them that dance, like life, is about listening, cooperating, and being willing to try again after you stumble. I taught them that saying thank you to a partner mattered as much as keeping the beat, because dancing is never a solo act, it is always a conversation. One of the proudest moments of my life came when my daughter performed in her school's talent show. She had choreographed a simple routine with a few friends, and I sat in the audience holding my breath. When the music began, I saw her stand tall, her steps confident, her smile radiant. I thought of my own first performance years earlier, and tears filled my eyes. I realized in that moment that the spark lit by American Bandstand had not burned out. It had been passed on, glowing in her every movement. Now, with grandchildren at my side, I find myself repeating the same rituals. I take their small hands, sway gently to the music, and watch their faces light up with joy. And in those moments, I know the rhythm is still alive, not just in me, but in the generations that follow. As the seasons of life changed, so did my world. The children grew up, the house grew quieter, and retirement left me with long hours that sometimes felt empty. There were days when loneliness pressed heavily on me, and I wondered how to fill the silence. That was when I turned back to the companion that had never left me: music. I began to pull out my old records, some scratched, some worn thin from years of play. The moment the needle touched the vinyl, I felt a familiar comfort. Without thinking, my feet began to tap, my shoulders swayed, and soon I was dancing again. The movements were slower now, less polished, but the joy was as bright as ever. Each step reminded me that although time had changed my body, it hadn't taken away the rhythm inside me. Dancing became more than nostalgia. It became healing. On difficult days, when sadness or ache seemed overwhelming, a song could lift me. Moving to the music steadied my breathing, lightened my spirit, and reminded me that I was still alive, still capable of joy. It was as if the rhythm whispered, "You are not finished, keep moving." In time, I found a community of others who felt the same. At the senior center, I joined a small dance group. At first, I was shy, afraid I might stumble too much. But when the music began, laughter filled the room. We weren't perfect, but we didn't need to be. We supported each other, cheered each other on, and discovered friendship in every shared step. For me, it was proof that joy multiplies when it's shared. Even now, as age slows me down, I continue to dance. Not with the same speed or daring as when I was young, but with a gentleness that feels just as meaningful. Every time I move with the music, I feel connected to my past, to my family, to the show that first inspired me. That is why American Bandstand will always hold such a place in my heart. It gave me more than entertainment. It gave me a way to live. From a shy girl in front of a black and white screen to a grandmother dancing with her grandchildren, the rhythm has carried me through joy and sorrow alike. Thank you for allowing me to share these memories with you. May you, too, always find a reason to keep moving, no matter what life brings. With love, a longtime Bandstand viewer, her letter is more than a story. It is a melody carried through time, one that began in the glow of a black and white screen and still dances today in the hearts of her children and grandchildren. Reading her words, we are reminded that American Bandstand was not only a television show, it was a thread that stitched itself into family life, shaping afternoons, sparking dreams, and giving ordinary moments extraordinary meaning. And now, we turn to you. Do you remember where you were the first time you saw American Bandstand? Were you in your living room after school, sitting close to the set so you wouldn't miss a single step? Did you watch with your parents or friends, maybe even with someone you secretly admired? Was there a dancer you looked forward to seeing every week, someone whose smile lit up the screen or whose moves you tried to copy in your bedroom? Did you ever pull back the furniture, just as she did, and practice those steps until your feet ached, but your heart felt lighter? Perhaps your family, too, gathered around the television. Do you remember your father tapping his foot, your mother commenting on the clothes, your siblings laughing as they tried to keep up with the rhythm? Maybe you even have a keepsake tucked away somewhere, a magazine clipping, a record sleeve, or a faded ticket stub that still carries the scent of those days. What memories do these songs awaken in you now? Do they bring back the feeling of being young, of discovering yourself in the music, of dreaming about who you might become? These are not just her memories. They belong to all of us who were touched by the music and magic of that time. Each story you share adds another voice to the chorus, another step to the dance. Together, we can keep alive the spirit of a show that defined a generation and continues to inspire. So we invite you, tell us your bandstand story. Which song, which dance, which face on the screen will you never forget? Write it in the comments or simply hold it close to your heart as you listen with us. And if you'd like to join us for more journeys into these treasured memories, subscribe to our channel and turn on the bell so that every new story finds its way back to you. Because the music is still here, waiting to be remembered, waiting to be shared.